Brad Pavel.
Present.
Betsy Ronk. Joel Fair.
Present.
Kathy Parks. Mary Mosquera. Jenny Scott. Tina Freeman.
Here.
We do have a quorum. Let's see, the first item on our agenda is to approve or amend the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second?
I second the motion.
Do roll call.
Yes.
Okay. Brad Pavel.
Yes.
Betsy Ronk. Joel Fair.
Yes.
Kathy Parks.
Yes.
Mary Mosquera.
Yes.
Jenny Scott.
Yes.
Tina Freeman.
Yes.
Okay, we need to approve the minutes from the November meeting. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to read those.
Mm-hmm.
We have any changes, additions? And a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes as written.
A second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Brad Pavel.
Yes.
Betsy Ronk.
Approve.
Joel Fair.
Approve.
Kathy Parks.
Approve?
Mary Mosquera.
Approve.
Jenny Scott.
Approve.
Tina Freeman.
Approved.
All right. The minutes are taken care of. All right, the next thing on our agenda is to review the national, state, and city data for 23-24 fiscal year, to provide operational goals for fiscal year 25-26. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Was there any member of the public that wished to say anything? Okay. We've got a whole lot of stuff in these papers this time.
Madam Chair, would you like me to start the introduction on this?
That would be perfect.
All righty. So while I apologize slightly for an 81-page packet, it is the largest in this board's history, and that includes ones that had decision-making involved for the, what was called the MGF at the time and the Cape Center. So this is the most material you guys have ever been asked to read in 7 days. So that is why I made this a discussion item, because I'm not anticipating, I don't think that a week is enough time to digest this fully to start making motions and make dramatic changes. What I'm hoping to get from all of you tonight, and some of you were able to meet with me beforehand to get some of the smaller questions out of the way, and I greatly appreciate that, because there is a lot to digest here, and there are a lot of firsts for this board and the city wrapped up in this item. This board has never seen national and state level statistics as pertaining to the parks and rec industry. So to make decisions that are strategic, to make suggestions that for improvement, it was important to see it all within the context of the industry itself. Every park and rec agency is different to some capacity. Every metric that is gauged and collected by the National Recreation and Parks Association does not always apply. A perfect example of that is the fact that we have 27 acres of parkland, and I don't anticipate us getting a bunch more at any given point in the history unless something dramatic happens to sea level. So when it comes to the data that they collect, not all of it applies to us. Obviously, we're not maintaining acres of forest. We're not maintaining acres of trails. We don't have any equestrian features. So we enter what we have in the annual survey. This was also the first time that the city participated in this national level survey. So I'm excited for next year, because then we'll start to be able to produce an annual report that is reflective of our progress, our changes, in conjunction with the national and state level agencies or metrics that they collect. I was actually turned on to this whole, the real pretty packet that was in there. That's the national level report for the agencies. A lot of agencies across the country report to this. Not everybody. Clearly, Cape Canaveral didn't report to it until this year. But the ability for us to compete, being Little Cape Canaveral, I was pleasantly surprised with how we measured up to other agencies on other levels. Not every agency manages its own maintenance. Not every agency manages its own programs. If you compare the roles of like the leisure services department that is in COCO, all they do is facility rentals, and their 2 employees have certifications in wedding planning. I'm sure we could throw together a nice one for you, but that's not exactly our role and responsibility. We'll rent you the pavilion, we'll tell you the best times to go out there as far as, that goes, but we're in a little bit different niche. We're mostly programs, we're a handful of facilities, and we're focused on very much the quality of life activities, hands-on things that people can do and take advantage of, particularly since our community has a very large percentage of people that are retired and service industry people that don't work traditional hours and jobs. So what I've presented to you in the most organized method that I could provide is, and this can improve with your feedback, and it can improve as we go on next year, because I know what the NRPA is looking for in terms of metrics. So it's already just filling out their initial survey. I made a ton of notes of, okay, we need to start tracking this for next year. Let's be able to report on this next year so we can show, more areas where we can compare ourselves to other agencies and the overall industry and the metrics and standards that are part of that. But in the defense of all the prior directors that did not participate, we've never had the real ability to participate in this on this level. We didn't have a big community center. All we had was some tennis courts, some racquetball courts, and some shuffleboard courts, and a couple parks. But now we actually contract membership. We have a sizable staff, and we can actually finally take a look at a full fiscal year of not just operations for the new building, but also with the new fee schedules that were passed over the last between 22 and 23. So that's one full year of data that we can use to the best of our ability to make improvements not only for our performance, but in also our effectiveness in serving the community that we're here to serve. So I'm sure each of you looked at this data with your own expertise, your own backgrounds, and that's what I value the most, is that all of you are coming from different areas. All of you utilize our facilities and our services in different capacities. So what I'm hoping for from each of you, and maybe as a consensus of the entire board, is a handful of areas where we can make improvements or do the research to find out where we can make the improvements or how dramatic these improvements can be to make us a more effective department, to put us in a higher bracket of professionalism. And that's all part of my grand goal in getting us accreditation as a Parks and Rec agency. So I will turn it over to you, Madam Chair, and you can take it from there. Or ask me any questions that...
I don't even know where to start on this one. I don't know how many of you met with Molly, but she's done an awesome job putting this together. It's a whole lot of information. Does anybody have any comments initially?
I did quite a bit of research
Okay.
on this, on the agency, and I just, I just wasn't sure where we were a good fit, because, you know, I see that they utilize a lot of data analytics, comparative analysis, and looking at the communities that are members of this agencies, the fact that we're so unique, and comparing us to them. For example, in the booklet, they said the typical park and recreation agency department has an annual operating budget of $6.45 million. And that's 5 times what we have. And so we're definitely not typical of, you know, their parks and agencies that they're referring to in their booklet. Also, too, I found it interesting when I was looking at, you know, who is involved in the agency and who their directors are. I mean, they're all from really big cities. Catherine Level, for instance, she's Commissioner of Parks and Recs for Philadelphia. And Kathy Abbott, she's Director of Boston Parks and Recreation. Phil Ginsberg, General Manager of San Francisco Parks and Recreation, and Lyndon Weiswerder, Minneapolis. The board chairwoman, she's from Christine Stratton, she's Boston. And then the Jesus Aguirre, Washington, D.C., he was director of parks there, and now he's at Seattle. So I was, you know, like I said, I did a lot of research. I know that they said that they have 2 goals in their booklet, and number 1 was to create and analyze data to assist parks and rec agencies to make optimal decisions on operations, programming, and spending. And I think that that the city has done a really good job of operations, programming, and spending. I mean, I'm one that's, you know, for home rule instead of adding another layer of bureaucracy, you know, to the mix. But their second goal is the NRPA develops data and insights to support park and rec professionals to make the case for greater and more stable funding. So again, you know, the majority of their agencies, they have a lot more non-tax revenue than what we generate. We don't generate much in the way of non-tax revenue. The fact that we're only 2 square miles and we're competing with all these big cities, I was kind of at a loss, you know, as to what we could benefit, you know, from being compared, you know, to these other programs and the like. But anyway, like I said, it seems to me it's like it's another layer of bureaucracy, another agency. We have so many agencies right now that we are involved with the Florida Department, you know, of Environmental Protection, the Bureau of Beaches and Coastal Systems, their regulatory program, the coastal commissions, the Florida state statutes. So I was confused as to, you know, what the benefits are for this and how we are going to be able to compare ourselves to such an organization with such large cities that are involved in this, and looks like a lot of which is the majority.
I kind of agree with you, but I thought what I found possibly the most helpful was in the attachment 5, where it just has the state of Florida. So when you're looking at what else do we have in Florida, and there were only 50-some people who respond, or communities that responded, which isn't a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
Some were less than that responding to things, but at least I felt like that gives you a little bit better idea of how you compare to your surrounding communities, possibly. Now, it would be nice to know who they were. And are there any that respond that are our closest neighbors? But I didn't see where they told you that. But regardless, I thought it was interesting that if you look through Florida, because obviously let's say the revenue per capita and, you know, operating expenses and everything are going to be very unique based upon the part of the country that you live in. It shows that for our small little community, we're looking to be in the medium to the upper quartile, which is a good for us. You know, we're definitely not doing a poor job. Let's put it that way. So that might be more helpful. I don't know, moving forward to see. Like I said, it would be interesting to know who these were that participate. Is that something that can be found out or not?
Yes, I can dial it down. When you can see at the top of the page for the state statistics, it says selected filters. Now, the more boxes you check when you're filtering out data like that, the fewer and fewer responses you're going to get. So my initial search for this, I checked all the boxes. I wanted there was a big gap for the budget thing, so I selected like the 1 million to 5 million range. That was what was given. And then I selected the 10,000 residents, and then I selected the amount of acres that we manage, and I started dialing in on all of these different things, and one city popped up, us. So you're not going to find too many cities that are like us. But you can look at other coastal communities, you can look at how you compare on the national level, and I'm not beholden to NRPA for anything except for my certification. So it's not a level of bureaucracy. This is a nonprofit organization that just helps support agencies and gives us advocacy, because this particular department, I'm not sure if you guys realize this, but this town has never paid full price for a playground in its history. We've always gotten grants, and those grants come from federal and state levels. So that's why participating in this, all it is me once a year taking our budget, taking our reports, and filling out a form and seeing where we land. But by doing that, it also allows me, I can dial in these search filters to get more benchmark communities. The way that I discovered this resource was through the master planning certification course I'm taking. Assignment number 3 was identify benchmark communities and see, the assignment itself was see how you compare and present why you selected these communities as your benchmark, because they know that it's not a one-size-fits-all. And what's reflected in these national level stuff is things like state parks. Like, we can't compare to Doris Sleeper, we can't compare to the Ocala National Forest, but we can learn from the biggest and the best on practices that'll help trim down our cost, boost our cost recovery, and give us ideas that maybe we didn't think about because, well, we're just little Cape Canaveral. So if you think big and you think out of the box, you can get ideas and then whittle them down to adapt them to a 1.9 square mile city with a 1.3 budget, $1.3 million parks budget. So.
But do you think that we're going to be at a disadvantage competing against, the big boys when we're such a small?
I'm not competing.
I mean,
Yes.
competing for grants. When we're competing for grants and funding and things like that. And so our grant requests are going to be going in with theirs. I mean, do you think we're going to be at a disadvantage?
NRPA doesn't do grants.
Well, but they provide all the sources of the grants.
They tell us what sources, but most of the grants that we've been successful in getting, which is basically all of our playgrounds and both of our pavilions that are currently rented, Banana River Park and the other one, are all state level through the FDEP.
Oh, okay.
So-
Because in the booklet, they were saying that they were providing sources of grants and information and things like that. So I thought maybe that's why we're looking at them is to go into their pool that they have connections with, that they
If I feel
know
that we
about.
are eligible for a grant, I'll go for it. If I feel we have a shadow chance, I'll go for it. But it's more just understanding the industry broader to see what's outside our doors, to make the professional connections and just soak it all in and see how we can learn from people that have bigger budgets, way more challenges, and are also very heavily dependent on a federal level that is not guaranteed from day to day. As current news indicates, a lot of grants are frozen or maybe not frozen, depending upon which way the court goes. So I don't rely on NRPA for that, but what I do rely on NRPA for is industry standards, like what should I be looking at? What should my targets be? I thought that when, I was very surprised to see a 20% cost recovery. I was very surprised at that. I would like to see 30. That's what I would like to see for this community, where the people that are participating in the things are the people that are paying for the things, not the average Joe Blow paying for somebody else's pickleball tournament when they
Right.
have never heard of pickleball or care about it. So using them as just a resource, because they also provide trainings, both free and paid. They offer professional development certificates. We have a staff member that's getting ready to take the certified playground safety inspection. That's going to reduce our insurance. There's all these other resources that, yes, we're not a state park, we're not the National Arboretum or whatever, but we can still learn. And we can still take their ideas and make them fit our
Yeah.
needs.
Well, I definitely see it's definitely an advantage for the professionals because of the certifications, because of the networking, the opportunities, to move from job to job, that type of thing. So I definitely see the benefits there for the professionals. I just was having a hard time seeing how we're going to be compared apples to oranges, when we're so unique and so different. And then and from what I was seeing and from what they were saying as far as their data and what the medians were, it just seemed like we weren't a good fit, so because we are so much smaller than some of these ones that are involved in the agency.
Yet, we still met their medians.
In some areas.
Let me say something, please. I'm not a very smart guy in all this, but if we can compare this to the CPG industry, and you look at the Procter & Gamble's, the Nestle's, the Unilevers, et cetera, they're great training organizations. That's why smaller companies recruit those people from the larger companies to take that knowledge and resource and try to apply it, and do apply it, to the smaller organization to make that organization better. I think a key point, if you just look at the top line in this document, is, as Molly, the director said, the cost recovery. The national average is 25%. Our average is only 20%. Okay, so we're kind of below that. That targets, that says, hey, we're not getting enough revenue for whatever reason, and we need to delve into that. Obviously, operating expenditures per capita, we can't compete against Boston, but they're saying it's $100 per person. I don't know what ours is, but we can
130.
figure that, excuse me?
130 and change.
We're pretty darn close, okay, to a town that has several million and we have a few thousand, okay? So it's metrics. That's all this is, and you're absolutely right. It'll help our professionals get their certification, and if they move on, unfortunately, okay, because it's always horrible to have a brain drain, but it shows that our organization wants to invest in their employees, and that puts a positive spotlight on our city.
Well, when I looked at it, I saw that there were a lot of places where they broke it down by population. And so we do very well in all the places where they did a less than 20,000 population, then they go up in steps. And if you look at from the numbers that Molly Thomas gave us on the revenue and expense reports, and you put it up against what's in here for the same category, under the less than 20,000 population, we are either smack in the middle or in the upper quartile. We do very well, say, in operating expenditures per capita, in operating expenditures per full-time employee. And there were some of the others that I noticed that we are smack there, right in the middle for small communities. So we already know that we're doing a good job, or that our staff is doing a good job in shepherding us and gives us a good foundation so that we can kind of move forward and see how we can just tweak things to be a little bit better in the next year. And it kind of allows us to look and see perhaps a couple places where we can put our focus on.
And I think on that same light, kind of what Molly had said was, when we look at all of those metrics, what jumped out at me was our biggest problem is in our cost recovery.
Yes.
Because this year it was 20%, but if you run the numbers for next year, we're only at 14%. And so how are we going to get ourselves even back to 20% if next year our expenses go up 23% and our revenue is going down 14%? You know, it doesn't add up. So therein lies, I think, a good place for us to say, we might do well in many of these other areas, yay for us, but in the revenue area, there's a lot of room for improvement so that we do meet those other benchmarks of other places.
And
I think what we have to look at, and you bring up an excellent point, the director and I spoke earlier, what we need to figure out is what our revenue gap is. And what that revenue gap is, and let's look at just the C5 building. We have plus or minus 250 members of Silver Sneakers, okay? I have no idea how much the Silver Sneakers insurance company pays us.
I figured that out.
Well, good, because at 250 individuals times the $300, $352 equals X. That should be our revenue. But if Silver Sneakers is only paying us $10 per person, whatever that magic number is, that's our revenue gap. And we need to look at that. The same is true in rentals of conference rooms. Granted, we have rules, and I think that's great. But if we're renting the conference room 75 times a year, and a third of that is discounted, whatever that magic number is, we have to look at what that revenue gap. So we would have what our revenue should be compared to our actual revenue. And that'll determine where we need to concentrate. And I think the same is true for Nancy Hansen. But that will show where we need to concentrate in building up or changing our program. On Silver Sneakers, if they're only giving us $20, hey, I have health care. I have to pay a $40 copay. So maybe there's a copay. Not sure how that would fly, but we need to think outside of the box on that. And
actually, Molly and I had a really good conversation about all of those, because as much as you see on there, like when you were talking Silver Sneakers, there's actually all of these three categories are sponsorship programs, which means that these people are paid under a contracted price. And when you add that up, it's 610 people are under a contracted price. And so if you look at the revenue of just the C5 and of the sponsorships, you see what is, you see how much you're making. And they're only paying us, down here, $1.85 a month for each one of those contracted people in general. Now
so we're
there's-
losing $30.
So in some, now Silver, you know, one may pay $3, one may pay $1, we don't know this. But yes, and one of the things that we were talking about, Molly and I, was, well, is it worthwhile to maybe definitely address the non-resident people who are falling under this sponsorship, because maybe they should not be at all allowed to participate in the sponsorship if you're not a resident here in Cape Canaveral. Why should we be subsidizing people who come from Cocoa Beach to use our facility?
Or have them pay another fee to
Well,
be able
and
to
and I
use
think the question was from the contract, we don't know whether that would be allowed, whether they would be allowed to pay an additional fee on top of that contracted price, what's in the contract. But since the contract is only a yearly contract, those things can be changed. And so I think there's room in there definitely to look at that. I was giving her the example that in this one sponsorship of nearly 200 people, and this is the one my husband's in, so I know what this is, they actually charge the participant $30 a month to participate, but they're paying Cape Canaveral like $2 a month.
So your husband's paying $30.
To the
and-
company.
To the insurance company.
Correct.
That's his copay.
Right. But they're only paying Cape Canaveral $2 for
On a
him to use.
contracted rate.
Correct. So I'm like, well, those people definitely should just dropped. And in fact, if we looked at good numbers and good data of how many people and where they live, my theory would be, I think you could drop much of the sponsorship and drop the senior rate and make more money.
For clarification, the $30 he's paying is only for the gym membership?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that way you could say, okay, we're dropping these sponsorship rate, these sponsored programs, but we're going to lower our rate, our member rate, whether it be the daily rate or the monthly rate for residents, non-residents, whatever we come up to be, that the numbers prove out to be the best. And people might be like, oh, okay, I get that. Now, I told my husband, it's just as cheap for him to pay the monthly rate here as to pay this company. Why should we not pay the city $32 instead of paying some company $30?
That makes sense.
Right. So that totally is I think is a ripoff.
Well, I think what you're talking about, because we had done that at one time, is that if you pay that $30 fee to your insurance or as an add-on to your insurance, you can go to any facility that accepts that. So you could be going down to Cocoa Beach Health
No,
and
you
Fitness.
cannot.
Well, at least on ours, we were able to.
Well, you can, but you have to pay $30 for every single facility that you go to now. This is Active Fit is what it's called. And it's not my health insurance or anything. It's just that for elderly people, like, if you belong to ARP or AMAC or whatever, they have a lot of these different programs, that you can pay a fee for. And so he chooses to pay the $30 and go to the C5 because he wants to play pickleball indoors. I pay the $30 and I go to Cocoa Beach Health and Fitness, but I can't go to the C5. If I wanted to go to the C5, I'd have to pay another $30 a month, and I could
That's
add on
not what
another
I
facility.
have done before.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
gone
that's
to
what
both.
this program is.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's many of these, and that's why I said, we need to look at what all of these are, who uses them, what are we being reimbursed, and is there a better way to structure our fees to still attract people to come, possibly lowering the senior rate, because this is all senior-based, and recouping a better cost here, a better revenue for the city.
Excellent point. Director, is there a way that we can find out what are those business, whatever it is, the insurance companies for silver sneakers?
Sponsorships. There's 3 different sponsorship contracts we have. Is that how it is?
Okay, can we find out what the copay is for the individual?
Yes,
Okay,
because that was something that was never forthcoming to us, that they're not telling us that anybody's paying anything.
Now, I think, is anybody here knows anything about silver sneakers?
I've got silver sneakers through United Healthcare
And I don't think you pay anything.
and Medicare, and I don't pay anything
Right.
for it.
Because that's a Medicare Advantage product.
Yeah.
And so that's just one of the perks of having a Medicare Advantage product.
Not necessarily. Some of the insurance that are Part Gs, there,
Yeah, that's
it's
different.
included in that.
And mine
A
is
C,
regular,
Medicare Advantage is a C.
Right.
and I don't
Okay.
have a Medicare Advantage plan. I've got the Medicare and the supplement.
But
You
there's
guys are lucky. I have regular insurance for my company, and I don't get any gym.
Well, but it does,
But I think this is a great question for our city's HR department to find out what these silver sneaker programs pay the city and what it costs our,
That's in the contract that must
250.
be signed every year.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
so
and
that can be
instead
an
of going
action point.
$32, and if the rate these people pay is 30, instead of doing $32 a month, cut it down to 20. That's a significant savings, and we'll be increasing our revenue by $18 per person per month.
Exactly.
And we could promote it as such as well.
Yes, you give them the option.
Yeah.
Give them the option.
Because like Ms. Scott said, I can't believe we're up to Medicare G now, but it seems like there's a lot of different options for different people to meet different needs, and I'm sure you have snowbirds that maybe take advantage of that $30 that might be flexible, or because they can go to their gym or their YMCA back home, and then when they come down here, they can come down to the C5 or do Cocoa Beach Health and Fitness. And so maybe there's a package out there that allows kind of a traveling membership, kind of like, I don't know why they wouldn't just go with Planet Fitness and pay $10 a month and go anywhere in the country. But there's different levels of need, there's different programs, and when I took over the department, all three of these were already in play. We had been trying to get silver sneakers for a very long time because that was the most popular one. That was the one we got requests for. But the Nancy Hansen, because it was literally you can play tennis, racquetball, shuffleboard, and that doesn't cover your Zumba stuff. We weren't eligible to get that. So Silver Sneakers was the first contract that was signed. I don't think that they really anticipated how many people would be taking advantage of this, or how many people would be eligible to take advantage of it. When I inherited the department, I had a very brief crash course, and I was like, I don't even know what Ash Fitness is, or Silver and Fit, or Active and Fit. So when Ms. Ronk indicated that her husband had to pay for those services, I was like, well, that's something that they should have probably been upfront about when they were approaching us, to know how much they were cashing in on from the patron that's supposed to be benefiting from a free wellness program, and they'd be better served by us. And they would be contributing back to the overall bottom line of their community. So that's an excellent actionable item that I can take and run with, do the research and come back, because we can look at all of these contracts and look at how many people would be impacted, where they fall in our fee brackets in terms of residency and age. When I started digging into it, I didn't realize that some of the active fit, because I was anticipating, okay, this is all going to be people born after such and such date. That wasn't the case. I found some people that were in their 50s. And it's like, all right, so these people are paying. Now that I know that, they're paying for this. And, maybe once we get all of this information on, as far as, are we allowed to charge a copay? Who uses this? Is there better ways to recoup? How many people are impacted? Who those impacts are going to most affect? Maybe it doesn't make sense for us to enter a contract again with one of these. The Silver Sneakers seems to be the most beneficial for the individual because they're not paying anything additional. But I think looking at the data, being able to break it down effectively, and to kind of, as best as we can with such different plans, or oranges to tangerines, I guess we can go for, and see if that makes sense for our city to participate in. Because we don't have to participate in anything if we don't want to. But one of the goals that the previous administration had was to basically positively impact as many lives as possible with these wellness programs. I don't think, if you go back to a lot of the preliminary conversations on this board's level and on council's level, one of the big concerns was making sure seniors had access to this building and everything in it. And because of that, they kept those senior rates low, both for residents and non-residents, but I don't think they realized that almost 500 people are going to be taking advantage of this, which means they're not paying the set rate that was approved by you and council. So if something doesn't make sense and we have a solid argument to either amend it or remove it entirely, that's not off the table. This is your town.
It's admirable that the city was cognizant to say, we would like to provide, services for our seniors. Obviously, those people many have been property tax payers for a long time, contributing to the building of that facility. But I don't see that it's necessarily worthwhile to allow non-residents to take advantage of that. So I think that's another thing. If we can break it down by where do these people live, that especially the people who are, let's say, silver sneakers who pay nothing, and they can't be asked to pay a copay, let's say if that's in the contract, then you can easily just say, well, we have decided not to cover silver sneakers if you don't live in Cape Canaveral. I think that's totally fair to cover your residents, but not feel that you need to cover the rest of the world. And especially, I don't know how Silver Sneakers works, but if it goes with you to where you want to go, then you could be, right now, I think my husband said on a daily basis, there's probably about 40 people playing pickleball indoors at the C5 because of the snowbirds coming down and the weather not being too great outside. And he knows that at least half to 3/4 are not Cape Canaveral residents. And so they're either coming down, just for a month or two or whatever. And if they're able to use their silver sneakers down here, then that's really a ripoff to the city.
Well, you have a metric in the packet that you sent out, Molly. It's that pie chart. 50%, it looks like 48%, but 50% of the building is used by senior residents. 33% it looks like is used by senior non-residents. And the other third, excuse me? Well, okay, so we need to, but anyway. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's not really 3/4, it's probably 33%.
Well, and if when you sign up, it's not segregating you in the sponsorship program of whether you're a resident or non-resident, which is what Molly said, it doesn't, then those metrics are lost. That can't be factored into here very well. I think a lot of this comes from the Nancy. I know, but you know what I'm saying?
I can pull that out.
Yeah, I think that's important to know.
One of the
I have a question and then maybe a recommendation. The question, as we're talking about data, where do you draw the most up-to-date census data for Cape Canaveral? Because that's one of, population-wise, that's part of what you're feeding into these, into the system here. So I'm just trying to figure out where census.gov? And what's the latest census that was taken here? Okay. Okay.
Very bottom of that state of the city. Make that known that as of, say, May of 2024,
Okay.
this is our projected, based on feedback from your state, based on people that are filing taxes, et cetera, the other areas that, aren't the card that gets sent to your house for the census. So it'll change by maybe 10 people, 3 people, some years it goes up and down. And there's actually been quite a few changes that I pulled from, I think the beginning of the month or the end of December, that I've had to make some edits going into the next State of the City document, that some of our percentages have changed, especially in terms of demographics. So.
Yeah, the other thing that I wonder with census data is our ability to track renters, just the VRBO, the Airbnb aspect of it. Like how does that play in? Because if we're taking into account who the residents are, who are actually here, that we're trying to provide the facilities for, and then which of those people are using them, and trying to get that data is a little more difficult because we can't differentiate some of that. So that's the only thing that I was thinking.
Well, and I can speak from the community affairs side of it. When they're about to do a census, obviously I've only gone through one census in that capacity since I've been with the city. We kept promoting, hey, fill out your census. It helps us get funding. It helps us know where we stand. It helps us with all of these things. We kept getting nasty phone calls from the census people because they're saying, well, only X percentage of your households are responding and you have all these addresses that aren't responding. And I said, and that happened to coincide with the month that in some big travel magazine or AARP or something was published that said Cape Canaveral is the #1 growing vacation rental community in the nation. And I directed her to that article and I said, this is why every house isn't sending you a card back, because the people you're sending it to don't live there.
No.
So.
Thank you. That's helpful, the census.gov. And then the other thing, the recommendation that I would have is, as we're talking about changing any policies, whether it's silver sneakers and trying to figure out who would be allowed to use it or whatever, I would recommend that we have our meetings posted just on a little on a sheet or on a placard somewhere, both at the Nancy Hansen and at the C5, so that if somebody comes up and says, hey, and they've got a complaint, you can just point them to there and say, hey, these are open meetings. Feel free to come and voice your opinion there. And then, especially as we move toward dates where we might be making recommendations that would go to city council, that they can have input early on, and then we can actually get viable feedback from people that are using. Not that Ms. Rock, and that was great information, but the more we can gather, the better, I think. So if we have our meetings, because they're public meetings, if we have them posted somewhere where the people that are at the desk can just say, hey, here's the schedule for the meetings, feel free to go, and they can voice their opinions there.
That's a really good idea, because I'll just get people who stop me and complain about, well, when are you going to paint the lines for pickleball, or when are you going to do this or that? Just because they happen to know me or see me around or something. But you're right. It would be easier for staff to just say, just go to a meeting there in public. You can speak. And we did have that one time where all of those people did come. I don't remember. It was something on the fee schedule for Nancy Hansen or something like that, which was great.
Thank you.
Well, it also takes it off of there to just say, oh, go to the meeting, just go. Don't complain to me. Just go.
Can I get clarification on the fees for a second? If we have people who use the C5 center and they have either paid their monthly membership fee or their daily use fee, do we charge anything extra for using the facility for pickleball? Or is that is that maybe, is there a league fee that maybe makes up that, difference? Because we charge, don't we, at Nancy Hansen for the tennis court use, but we're not charging any, and I'm thinking of that maybe as an inequity. If we're charging a fee for Nancy Hansen court use, but we're not charging a fee for C5, indoor court use. So if I'm not thinking straight, please set me straight.
Okay, so the fees for the community center are higher because there's more available to them. Now, if they are participating in a specific program, such as a league, and I'll speak to the Zumba and all that other stuff next, but if they're participating in a tournament, if they're participating in anything that staff has to organize beyond opening the door and making sure that the nets and the equipment are available, they're paying an additional fee to participate in that activity.
But if they just want to go play tennis or racquetball at Nancy Hansen, they don't need to be a member of the recreation department. They can just go in and pay their fee.
Same with C5. If they're just going in to use the facility and they're not doing anything that's organized by staff specifically special,
Okay.
like a round robin or anything like that,
Yeah.
they're paying the daily rate.
Okay, so I'm looking at things, that looks a little different to me, because you have so much available at C5. You have the weight room, you have basketball programs, you've got the individual programs. If they paid a small fee for playing racquetball, would that help, to, I guess, to recapture that delta between what we're losing on an individual membership basis and what we accept for Silver Sneakers or one of those other insurance programs that some of our seniors use? I mean, it wouldn't just apply to seniors, it would apply to everyone. Do you understand what I'm
Yes,
asking? Okay.
and I wouldn't want to target a specific area just because, there is a certain level of kind of supply and demand. But at the same time, that's why this board and council set the fee for the C5 a little bit higher, even the daily rate, because we still have your name and number if you're participating in the daily rate, but you're actually paying more on that daily rate than you would than a monthly and all that.
But that's for using the whole facility.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for playing racquetball or pickleball or whatever. I'm talking racquetball, but it's not just for playing pickleball in that facility. So you're spending $4 a day and you're looking at me like, what are you talking about, Ginny? If you pay $4 a day or $6 a day or whatever it is, you get to use the weight room, you get to use the walking track, whatever else is in there. If you go to Nancy Hansen and you pay your, $2, you get to use the courts. So if you're just using the pickleball facility instead of the rack, instead of the other things at C5, it would be equitable to charge something for the use of the facility for racquetball. I'm sorry, for pickleball. I keep saying racquetball.
But what
For
I can say
pickleball.
is the members that are using the weight equipment are putting more wear and tear on the equipment than the people that are just walking in and hitting a ball around on the court.
I think the other thing when we originally, talked about the fee schedule and why we set it as we did was we realized that for staff, logistically, it would be too difficult to know that you only played pickleball and you didn't scoot up the stairway and walk on the track or whatever. Because it's the desk and everything is just not set up conducive to being able to catch people. You'd have to change the whole flow, and that wasn't really designed to do that, to, cut off people not being able to get to the gym unless they stop and pay, and then you can't go upstairs and blah, blah. So I think that was, I haven't heard anybody complaining about that, but I do know, just from both when I was there and my husband's used it a lot, I think most people who do play, they do use they use the walking track or the weights, and they play pickleball, they play basketball, they play volleyball, whatever is open. So they do use it for multiple things. And so I think,
But if there's a way to kind of get more money into the system, that's just the possibility, maybe even on the honor system.
That system does not work in this town.
No.
Well, just throwing that out there.
If
Because I wasn't allowed to card people when I first started here, and there were so many fights on the tennis courts, and so many people, and Kathy Parks can probably remember this, when Molly was just a secretary that was supposed to sit there and be quiet, getting screamed at over, I know that so-and-so doesn't live here 3 months out of the year, and I know that they only paid $1, and then they were out there for 2 hours,
Well-
and you didn't come out and charge them the other $1, but they should have been paying $2. No. Sorry.
Right, and I'm,
The honor
but I'm
system
looking
doesn't work
at,
on
I'm looking at what we've got 20, we have we're gonna have a bigger gap next year. Like you
Yeah.
pointed out. So if we're trying to find ways not to have such a large gap, that might be one way to do it, is to try to make it more equitable between the facilities and the players. If
Right.
Just a suggestion.
Right.
And if, I don't know if you guys have, and to me, this is our marching orders. How can we get more
Yes.
revenue into,
Absolutely.
to fix things?
And one idea that was actually thrown out, and it was discussed a couple times in different areas, and I think we can manage it now that we've got our feet underneath us a little bit. At the beginning, we weren't sure about these insurance companies. I'm still not 100% sold on them. But one of the things that has been discussed is for these people that don't really care about using this insurance thing, and they really just want the flexibility to go back and forth because all they do is play pickleball, and they only go to the C5 if it's raining, or if tennis league has all the courts for the time period that they want to play at, and they don't have the availability to come back in the afternoon. And we could consider proposing an additional type of membership that specifies that. That's like, let's call it a pickle pass or something like that, where it's a different rate.
Exactly.
It can be targeted to residents and then non-residents, because a lot of the people that do that back and forth, oh, Nancy Hansen's not available, or it's 70 degrees and that's too cold for me, then they go, that puts more demand. And then it also there's an effect where, and I've worked with Marcy and Missy on this, when Marcy's courts are filled, when there's a league playing, whether it be a pickleball league, whenever any open play opportunity where they can just come and have unstructured and socialize and just enjoy themselves is going to be impacted. I'm like, Missy, she's got something going on over here today. Get something over here going that would incentivize going over there, that would make them want to play inside, maybe because indoor and outdoor pickleball are two different sports to an extent. Like, they even have different balls. And if you hand them the wrong one, you will be informed of that. So there are different dynamics in it, and obviously people aren't throwing out lawn chairs at the C5 and, snacks and all that other stuff like they're able to do on the outside courts. But that would be an option to consider, like a joint thing that would give the pickleballers, especially if that's all they're doing, an opportunity to utilize both facilities. The same staff thing will come into play where we might need to either ban them, which is easy, wristbands easy. I mean, obviously we were all 20 and 19 once, and we know that wristbands are easy to get off, but we can also stamp them. So there are means to control it, even if that control is largely perception, instead of literally making poor Anthony stand at the stair door and go, oh, no, not you. You can go play at the Nancy Hansen, that's your level of membership kind of thing. So that's something that you guys can have me crunch some numbers on and see what would be equitable to have that other option. Because there could be some people that are like, well, I'm not going to pay both. So I'm just going to pay this daily drop-in rate wherever I go. But in terms of customer service, it would be good customer service to offer them an option that still benefits the city, that helps our bottom line, that helps our cost recovery, addresses the demand issue, but it's a win-win for those people that meet that needs. Perhaps that's how Medicare got to Plan G. But that doesn't mean that we can't try it.
And I was going to ask, and I see Marcy's here, is I know we're making good money with tournaments, and how you were saying how that filled up before you even advertised it. So, possibly increasing the number of tournaments or changing up to make them have a different focus of some sort or something to attract people. I don't know, especially pickleball tournaments, now that we have an additional couple courts, and so you could, change the number in a tournament. There really isn't any money outlay on that except for a shirt or something, so we're making big bucks on that.
And the way Marcy, sorry, I hate talking about you like you're not in the room. the way Marcy has organized the Space Coast Paddle Battle is it doesn't cost the city anything because everything's covered by the sponsorships, and we have people beating each other over the head to be the big deal. So,
well, that's what I'm saying is to do more of those because they're not offered anywhere else easily locally, and especially during the high pickleball season, I think it would be a great way to bring in additional. I know that's more work for you, Marcy, but I think it would be well received.
I think so too. Well received. We could target different areas of the year. We could get creative.
You could do just a women's, just a men's, just a couples,
even
just old people, just a young people,
teens,
whatever.
Yeah. All of those are good opportunities. We can also kind of play around with the differences between indoor and outdoor. We can take advantage of the different demographics that are coming into pickleball. When I first started, I had to give an eye roll every time they made me, every Tuesday morning and Thursday morning, and Tuesday night and Thursday night, we were setting up these pickleball nets for no one and breaking them down after no one played on them. And they were taking up the courts. Tennis would just move them out of the way to the best of their ability. They'd fall apart as they did it because they were like the assembly required ones every single time. And when pickleball did take off, it was the senior community. Well, now we just did Missy, in lieu of a winter camp, a traditional winter, child care camp, they turned it into net ninjas and taught a bunch of littles how to play pickleball. And the idea behind that is to almost, if we're talking, NCAA, we're creating a feeder program for our kids to be more active, and maybe we can get it to the point where we could do a youth tournament or something like that, because we are getting younger and younger people playing, and they're bringing their kids, they're singles themselves, and when they do start families, they'll bring their kids, and then we'll have an all ages demographic that we could tap into. That if we could get Joel's family to make up an entire pickleball team.
Take up all the courts.
Right? Yeah,
Everybody be
all the
mad at
courts
us.
are done. The Fair family has arrived. So those kind of things are the stuff that we've got in our long distance vision. And yeah, you don't have to convince me to throw a party that somebody else is going to pay for. So.
I would say that we do need to keep in mind, like whether it's paddle pass or wristband stamps, adding responsibility to staff to reduce revenue. We're still going to pay for it by having to hire more staff or train staff, but on these things. So anytime we're thinking about that, we need to take into account how will we raise revenue, how will we also be able to staff the revenue, right? So it is a balance, and keeping that in mind, even as we've seen some turnover at the C5, and different staff. So it's like, okay, how do we keep that in mind as we're thinking about how do we raise revenue? Could we create new programs? Could we add more things every time we're thinking we're adding that to somebody?
Growth.
Somebody's paying for that.
Yeah, manageable growth.
What about electronic payments at the facility or facilities? Because right now, I think if you go in like for a day, you have to pay in cash.
That is, you have to
Or-
pay in cash if you don't want to pay the convenience fee. And that is out of my wheelhouse. I have no control over the convenience fee. That has to do with the city's merchant services account, which is managed by finance. So you can pay, but it's,
But you have to go through the person who's sitting at the desk to pay that.
and they can.
Versus coming in and going, ding, ding, on my watch.
Yes.
It takes that much.
You still have to check in every time you come into the building. So you're still going to have to stop for 2 seconds regardless.
Yeah, but if you're not on a monthly pass and you waive it at that little reader, you have a reader there. So could you pay the fee the use fee instead of taking the individual person's time up by, making them do a transaction?
Well, there's Rec Desk has basically what's called a punch card system, and we made it available and nobody used it. So the ability for people to say, I want to do 10 visits, because that was brought to this board, and the lady held up her stack of, apparently she pays pickleball 365 days a year, twice at 2 facilities. But when they created that, nobody really wanted to take advantage of it because nobody wanted to pay the additional service fee that was attached to the credit card. So,
Well, but Joel I think Joel brought up, we have training and manpower. I think some of these things could be eliminated by, putting in automatic ways to pay things, whether you want to pay the fee or not. But that way you don't have the manpower use if we're trying to increase revenue and not have I'm sorry, what?
Like the little RIFD card readers where you just tap and go.
Yep. Yeah, or like the honest,
like Google Pay with your watch and stuff like that.
You
That would be
Subway,
something that I
you
would
go
have
like
to take
that.
up with our administrative services
Well,
for IT
Yeah, you
and security.
have that reader there already at like the C5 building, for example, that little,
But
but
it's,
it does allow it allows that little card to be read.
the only thing that we haven't done in the past that would facilitate that is we don't store people's credit card information. And that was a security decision. So that would have to be something approved by, I'd take it through IT and finance first, and then eventually it would have to be approved by whatever city manager is in place at the time that goes before it. But it's not impossible.
Well, if, on another path to how do we get more money is, and you guys may have spoken about this at another time, remember, I'm new and chatty. But I don't see any like vending machines, maybe I could have missed them, but.
We had vending machines in the past, and
Yeah,
it was, and I was approached by it again, and I said I had no intention of bringing them back. The ROI for the city is very low. We didn't have any
Okay.
control over what people were putting in them as far as, like I wouldn't install a cigarette machine.
No,
You
like
know what
a
I mean?
water
Like,
machine or, sell
We're not,
water.
we're also not encouraging plastic bottles and stuff like that. We try to do the reusable bottles and the environmentally friendly stuff. And then one of the big reasons we removed the stuff from the Nancy Hansen was two reasons. Anytime it messed up, staff was on the hook, and then we had to have a little IOU thing and wait for that vendor to pay us back because the person that had their dollar eaten demanded their dollar back right then and there and got upset with us. So it took, and then we had to explain that to finance of what's this IOU? Oh, we're waiting for the vending machine vendor to pay us back for the dollars that this machine was eating. And then you also had really unhealthy options in there, and we were trying to promote a culture of wellness. So,
And like, I don't know, somebody said to me, why don't they have, like a food vendor come in, and park their their trucks by the pickleball court in the morning and have coffee and donuts or something like that. So, again, I'm like, well, I don't know the answer to that.
well,
but,
it's illegal to do business on city property. And for every time that we would have a food truck come out, the fire department would charge a fee to come and inspect.
Because we did have some, I think, in the parking lot of the city hall at one point, or next door to
That
the
was-
city hall.
That
So-
was a, lack of a better term, I think they called it Street Eats. That was a contracted company called Kona Food Truck something that came in. They held that event either once a month or every other month. And the biggest complaint we got, it was, I don't want to say it got to the level of pitchforks, but a lot of those food trucks were not local businesses, and the local businesses were very upset, and the people that were trying to advocate for local businesses were upset that these outside people were coming in and taking away from them. So there's a lot of logistics and some history involved in that, but
Okay.
I'd be willing to talk it through with our community development director, because it would be them that would need to work on the legality side and to make that feasible. That, and we also don't encourage you to bring food into the courts. So you'd be standing on the sidewalk with your donut.
Well, it's just an idea. Again, it's like if we need money, how else do we get it?
Because that would probably surmount to be similar to a franchise agreement. And the franchise agreement in the code is incredibly dialed in to, for example, we have, there's a whole code section in Chapter 54 about recreational franchise agreements. And at our current state, the only recreation franchise agreement we have is a person that is permitted to utilize Banana River Park to drop off kayaks and conduct eco tours. And for that, to get to that vendor, to determine who that vendor was, we had to put out an RFP, and we got a bunch of proposals in sealed packages, just like they were bidding on a major project, that had to be reviewed by staff. And then we send that to council, and council determines whether or not that person is going to have a franchise agreement with the city and be able to do business on city property. And as it stands now, in order to get a franchise agreement, it's only $500 a year to the city, in addition, of course, to their business tax receipt.
Okay,
They're out there a lot.
Yeah, they do a very good business.
They did.
what about paying for parking while people are using the facilities?
I'm
Again,
going to have to divert that one back there, because that's going to be a determination for council. Paid parking around here is
well,
way
it may
outside of
have
my
been,
level.
the topic may have been discussed before, but I just don't know.
Yeah,
And if you're looking for, like, if you can't charge a fee for somebody to use the pickleball court, can you charge a fee for them to park, while they're playing pickleball? So,
that would be something that would have to go before council and be made at that level.
It'd be better served to look at possibly a way to better advertise rentals of like Manatee and Banana River and use those on, see if we can find a way to get more rentals, because we're, like you kind of had said at one point, that cost us nothing, more or
Right.
less, and yet that's a very good rate that we're getting on those places. Maybe somehow better advertise it in, whether it be in church bulletins or, I don't know how, but in the
Chamber of Commerce.
somehow, in Publix, I don't know, but just in places where people may not realize, oh, I can rent that pavilion for a birthday party or for anniversary thing or something.
And upping promotions on key areas is something that's easily achievable that doesn't require any approving beyond, depending upon what level you want to take it, like billboard on 528, I'd probably have to ask the city manager. But beyond that, upping our promotional stuff is a minimal demand on staff and a minimal cost investment that could produce a pretty good ROI.
Yeah, because I think if we could find a good way to advertise that and promote it, and you don't have to be a city resident to rent it, correct? Or
Correct.
do you have to be a city?
No, I'm not allowed to restrict.
Okay, so
that.
that's even better, because then, that allows you to rent to a much larger community base. And it's very nice facilities, especially Manatee Park it's very nice, and you got parking and, which a lot of places don't have. So,
Excuse me. I agree that the facility rentals are underwhelming, okay? I don't know how many people have used our facility rentals. I used one a couple of years ago, and I came up in front of city council and thanked the park department for the nice thank you card, okay, that you sent me. Those facilities need to be upgraded, okay? I didn't even use the facility because the door, I don't know if the door got fixed. I was afraid to break the key off. It was kind of nasty inside. The only thing I used was keep my ice in the freezer. Okay? That's one. Okay? So I do believe they need to be upgraded for the price that we're paying. Okay? Even if you put lipstick on them and paint them. Okay? Secondly, and Ms. Director, we discussed this in our meeting a couple of days ago. I used a picnic-type organization to put the whole party together. I had big pillows that the ladies sat on. I had charcuterie trays, yada, yada, yada. It was just very nice, and I used the gazebo that was on the park, on the boardwalk there, because, as I said, the facility was underwhelming. You mentioned about a franchise. The franchise pays the city only $500. Okay, good. However, we still get the rental fee. So if we can get someone to pay that $500 rental fee to be a party planner, lack of a better term, then we'll get, what do we charge, $200, whatever that is,
Yeah.
and. Excuse me?
I think it's $250 plus tax.
Fair enough, okay? And if we can triple that by having a party planner available to people, rock and roll. And advertise that. When you rent the facility, give them the information for the party planner and put signs up. There are no signs at these pavilions available for rental.
Right.
And someone mentioned about something else, signs for these meetings. Put the signs on the bathroom doors, because everyone uses that.
Captive audience is what we call that.
But there are no signs that those facilities are for rent. Sorry, I'll talk into this. And that franchise idea, whatever that term is for a party planner, makes total sense, makes it easy.
Right. And then another option, and this is something that I had as part of a takeaway when I toured the Parks and Rec facilities of Port Canaveral. A lot of people don't know they actually have their own Parks and Rec department. They obviously have a very different plan and a very different set of responsibilities compared to what we have. But I found out that their franchise agreement that's held by the same vendor we use for the kayak and ecotourism, that the way I don't know if they have it called code or if they have it just as a policy because they're a different type of agency, is they actually charge them a percentage, the same or similar to how we do our independent contractor fees. So there's an opportunity, and this would have, I would have to work with community development, because they're the code folks, they're the enforcement folks, to take a hard look at that franchise fee agreement, and is a flat fee fair anymore? Is saying carte blanche, just 500, do as much business as you want, is that fair to the city? Should the city be looking at their revenues and then basing their annual franchise fee off of how much business they do? That could be good, that could be bad. They could put it in there as no less than $500, so you don't end up losing money. But then you can get if somebody's making a mint off of it, off of walking on your sidewalks and driving on your roads and pulling into your parking spaces, that's all wear and tear. And if they're making a lot of money off of it and you're only getting 500, does that make sense, or should we? No, the franchise agreements, the way the code is written currently, they last about 3 years, and then there's an opportunity to renew. The franchise, the only franchise holder we have right now is that kayak vendor, and I actually just sent the draft to, at the direction of the city attorney. He goes, he goes, Gustavo didn't update this, and based on how long it's been, it's time for us to go back out. So within the next, say, 2 weeks, we'll be posting that franchise agreement to get new folks to come in and submit their proposals, and the current vendor's welcome to submit a proposal as well, but they're going to be weighed against all of the other ones to determine what's the best fit for the city and who has the best qualifications, who's got the best proposal. But
Great idea, no less than $500, or just say $500 plus 25% of your revenue or something to that.
Well, then you'd have to have someone police what they're earning.
well, part of the bid package that we're about to put out, actually, and this was at the advice of the city attorney, a little bit more of a robust, and I say more robust, there was no formal review process that I was aware of prior to this. I don't remember Gustavo ever doing a formal review. So what I did was once I saw that he had put a review process into the RFP package, I took some of those lessons learned from the folks at the port, and I put a review package together, and I'm asking questions about, where the franchise needs to fill out, like, how did you do? What's feedback from you? And then I take it and then I look at your revenues, and I look at if I've received complaints, if I know for a fact that your trailer just did damage to our ramp, if you hit a curb on the way in with your truck, it gives us a little more capacity to assess their overall performance than we've ever had. So going forward, the code hasn't changed. It's still 500. There's room for improvement there, I believe. But at least we're laying the foundation to take a closer look at these organizations every single year, because every single year they have to renew their BTR. Every single year they have to provide a copy of their updated insurance. Every single year they have to pay their franchise fee. So this gives us an opportunity to see what level of business they're doing, if there are ways that we could improve our service to them, and it gives us an opportunity to tell them how they can improve their service, not only to us as staff and administrators of the contract, but also if we get complaints from people, we can say, well, they're calling us because you're operating out of our park, and this is the feedback that we've gotten from people that were customers of yours. So the groundwork is being laid for that, but that's another thing that council can consider to revise that code, and we would work with community development in order to facilitate that conversation.
Excuse me, another option could be a performance-based contract, and you get the bids from the vendor. When I worked with the U.S. military and I ran their commissaries, the vendors would bid on their bases and say how much money I will generate in the commissary. For example, Patterson Space Force Base in Colorado Springs, my bid was $1 million year one. My bid for year two was 1.2 million, and year three was 1.4 million. So it gave me an opportunity to ramp up my business. Now, if I was short $100,000 in year one, that $100,000 went into year two. So now I had to hit 1.3 million. Now now with this type of contract, you're asking multiple vendors to say, this is what I will generate for you, as opposed to asking for a $1,000 retainer and we want 5%.
May I ask, just from that, your experience with that, how long with that specific agreement, just kind of ballpark, how long were you allowed to operate at, say, a deficit until they said, okay, you're not meeting your, if you're not meeting your quota every year, and every year that
Yep.
deficit
Rolled
gets
over.
tacked on, how long are you able to constantly operate at a deficit before they're like, yeah, no?
Annually, there was a review meeting why either A, I was above or hit target, or B, why I was below. I ran 37 locations. I had to keep track of the snowstorms in Wichita, why my commissaries were closed. I had to keep track of tornadoes in certain areas, or because a B-52 crashed at Barksdale and the space was closed. I had to keep track of all that. So that's why you have the annual review. So you have I'm sorry if you can't hear me. You have a 3-year performance-based contract. At the end of 3 years, if you have not hit your numbers, then it's up for bid again to other vendors.
And that was the similar system to obviously you're talking about federal government, so it'd probably not be too dissimilar, where it was, sealed bids, everybody submitted, everybody got together, we open the envelopes, we review this, ask questions, give answers, and then we start really digging into those proposals.
Yes, there was 4 or 5 contractors, maybe 6, that bid on every section where there are commissaries, like Tidewater is in the Virginia area, Patrick is in the southeast, I was in the Midwest, then you have the far west, you have the Pacific region, you have the European region. So there was multiple contractors to bid on the basis. Obviously, the more you can bid, it also included how much you're paying your employees. Okay, are they getting a good rate? Where do you get your supplies from, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, just FYI, we had to be 17% less expensive than the outside world.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to make a profit.
Okay.
I was a for-profit organization.
Okay.
So it's a performance-based contract. You tell the kayak dude, hey, look, bid how much money you can give the city of Cape Canaveral in year 1, year 2, and year 3. That encourages him to work harder.
Right, absolutely.
Because he has to pay you.
So just to recap so far, I'm trying to label these, I'm trying to cluster them, because we're all talking about the same thing, but there's just different aspects. So one of the first thing that I plan to do is look at those different revenue gaps. Look at our contracts, look at our rentals, look at who's impacted, what those impacts are, and what our opportunities are to make amendments on that. The second actionable item I have is to increase engagement by posting meetings at NHRC, Cape Center, C5, obviously they're posted here, they're posted online already, to get more feedback so that we can really assess the people's needs and get their feedback on fees, how much it costs, everything like that. My third actionable item is to take a hard look at our facility rentals, work on repairing the facilities. I do have specifically not a master plan, but a CIP plan for Manatee Sanctuary Park, where I've plugged in this year. We are slated to get new lights in the parking lot. It's a safety thing more than anything. For the year after that, I think I've budgeted for some of the more aesthetic, replacing rusted conduit, which is clearly visible to anybody sitting under the pavilion, work on the bathrooms. Those are a constant thing because anything metal just corrodes regardless of stainless, just doesn't even stand a chance here. And then the fourth actionable item I have is to look at vendor opportunities and to work with mainly our community development department and explore not just vendor opportunities to see if we can get a food truck out there, to see what things we can do within the code as it stands or what changes need to be made to the code, and then to discuss the opportunity for changing our recreation franchise fees themselves to look at performance-based options instead of flat fees. Does that capture everybody's actionables so far? Sorry, that's a lot. It's almost like 81 pages.
Well, you did give us 82 pages.
82 with the cover sheet, yeah.
I have one other, also a possibility, and especially based on our conversations that we had, that another way to improve revenue is to have perhaps maybe one, maybe two, but one other community event where you can bring in food trucks, because you said Friday Fest, having the vendors, food trucks, all of that is all revenue. And if it can be at a local facility, as long as it had some parking. Mm-hmm. And I know there's not a whole lot of parking, but at least at Cherry Down Park and at Manatee, there is some parking.
Cherry Down's not ours.
Oh, it isn't? I thought... Oh,
No.
it's the county.
Yeah.
Right.
Ours
Not
look a
yet
little
the
better
boards.
than that. There's room for improvement, but ours look way better than that.
Okay, then just Manatee would have parking. And especially, that would not incur any costs except using our own staff.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is to bring in vendors, like perhaps what we would have at Friday Fest, but maybe some other, maybe an environmental type community event, or a community event where, you know, looking at the stars, someone's going to come and we'll have a community evening event where we'll learn or do something different and have vendors there and food trucks and see how that would work out.
We used to have a food truck Friday or food truck Saturday, Thursday, something like that, where food trucks came from Orlando, a lot of them came from Central Florida, some really good ones, and it was very well attended. And we charged each of those food trucks to. Where was that? It was right here. It was right out here where the dog park is, and
That was the run by the Kona Food Truck Luau organization. That was operated by Kona Food Truck Luau organization. They had a contract with the city. They paid us a small flat fee per food truck, and they coordinated that. The staff was only standing there with the handout and making sure that the cones were in place. But the only challenge that we had to that is that it angered a lot of local restaurants. Yeah. Some of those aren't here anymore, but
Yeah, some of them aren't here anymore.
some of those aren't here
exactly.
anymore.
But it
it's
was
still,
very, yeah. But some of those food trucks too were local, were local residents.
Yep, some of them were.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
And
of them were.
it was very well attended.
Now there's more food trucks than
There
there
are.
were 10 years ago.
And
So
local
there's-
at that, and local at
Yeah.
that. So that's something that we could revisit again. And honestly, I think part of the challenge and the blowback we got from that is because we didn't have control of which food trucks got in. That was something organized by Kona Food Truck Luau's. And they were great. They cleaned up after themselves. They always brought us quality, unique, really unique. I typically wouldn't consider buying sushi off a truck, but they had some very, very fun stuff that you're not going to see in Brevard, but, we're in a different world now. So that's definitely something that we could explore bringing back, especially since we have this extra parking lot over here, because the only real limitation when it comes to food trucks is the spacing. They have to be 10 feet apart minimum, and they are very particular about that especially after that explosion, which was either in Fort Pierce or Orlando. They had a bad incident where the food trucks were too close and they blew up and a lot of people got hurt. Because every food truck's different. Some guys, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's one particular person, a vendor, I'm pretty sure it's barbecue, but I end up behind him on 528 and I pray that they never hit their brakes because they have two giant propane tanks. Like propane tanks the size of me on the back of the truck. And I'm like, okay. But then you also have people that have like generators. So there's different trucks have different needs. Some need fryers, some need refrigerant, some. So the fire department is very adamant when it comes to spacing them out and keeping them safe. But if we're running the event, they don't charge us for inspections because they're us.
Right. But it was
So.
just a once a month,
Yeah.
type thing, and the citizens really enjoyed it. But you're right. I remember there was a couple, I can think of two right now that complained.
Yeah, because one of the people that was one of the big champions and that pushed us into exploring those ideas was former Mayor Rocky Randalls, because he absolutely loved it. So, and he enjoyed the community aspect of it, because we put out the tables and big long
Right.
tables, kind of Oktoberfest,
Right.
style. So people sat next to people that they would normally not interact with. They got to meet their neighbors, break bread with their neighbors. That was a positive community building experience.
Right. I remember the two that complained, McDonald's and Southern Charm.
And there was a wine bar down the road called Bocce.
Oh, yeah.
They were very vocal
Right.
in that, even though we did not allow the service of alcohol at those events at that time because of the nature of them. We were trying to keep it very family friendly, and we also didn't have to want to worry about how. Sometimes alcohol gets things out of control if you don't have enough staff and oversight. But I think there's an opportunity to bring that back now because we have a lot more people. We have a lot more people that are engaged and out and about. And as everybody saw post-COVID, even before COVID, people still weren't going out as much.
Right.
And it's like they didn't appreciate the fact that they could go out until they spent 2 years of not being able to go out and do what they wanted to do. And now people, even our Friday Fest numbers in attendance have gone up.
Right.
So,
And it was hard to see how one night a month was having that big of a detrimental effect on their bottom line.
yeah, and it wasn't.
But
Right,
would you
and it
have to
didn't.
get the fire, would we have to pay the fees for the fire department?
They haven't
and all
charged
that?
us in the past, like they don't charge us to inspect the trucks at Friday Fest. The only rules that
Okay.
they have is for us to ensure, poor John has this job of making sure they're 10 feet apart before they get there, and they all have to be on time for the inspection, and they're not allowed to fire up anything until they get inspected. So,
They have the same rules also if you were over at Manatee Park.
yes, those are like state level fire codes. Yeah, statutes, maybe even national level at this point,
It'd be
because
nice to
food
see
trucks
more
are.
things going on over there.
The only challenge with Manatee is the parking.
And there is some parking, not, compared to a lot of our other parks.
And accessibility. One of the things that came up in my one-on-ones with those who were able to meet with me, and this is for those that are on council and those that were around 10 years ago, there was a project to improve wayfinding. The hardest part of anything with Banana River and Manatee Sanctuary Park is to get people off A1A and realize, A, Banana River Park is not part of Puerto del Rio, and you are welcome to make a left, maybe not go straight, they might not want you to go straight, but you are allowed to go to the
Yeah.
park. There is signage there saying this is, a community park. But when we would do events at Manatee, there was always a challenge in getting people to go back there if they didn't know it was there. And even with some of the events, we would hear, I had no idea this was back here. Well, that's part of the reason to throw an event back there. But the wayfinding signs that were installed as part of that project were designed for pedestrians. So I'm not sure why that decision was made, but it is made it difficult for us to navigate people that are from out of town, that are in rental cars, that may not have the Android Auto or the Apple Auto set up on their rental car to find these places. And
Can we get signage up on A1A, signs that are easy for motorists?
that would be something, that's an actionable item that I can work with that would be kind of a combination of transportation and code, because what you put on the side of A1A is very much dictated by FDOT. So that might take a little bit of doing, but it's not impossible. And I think that it would also help lend towards, hey, people going back there to watch a launch and, hey, I can rent this, awesome. So there's opportunity in that to improve revenue.
Have you ever been approached for the use of, and I don't know if they would want it too often, at Manatee Park for a farmer's market?
Not at that location.
Okay, because I was going to say that would be a good location for it, because I have been to some of the things that it's, people had set up tents along the path and that kind of thing when there were some
That was the
events there.
Space Coast Arts Festival
That
that
could
did
be.
that.
But I was just curious because I know it's becoming a bigger thing as everybody wants to eat healthier and try to find, more locally sourced food and such. Just curious if anybody had approached you on something like that.
Not for that location, but there are considerations and have been considerations about bringing our local food truck, farmer's market back. We had one previously. Unfortunately, there was a building still there, so there wasn't a lot of room for A1A frontage, and that was that was another situation where Gustavo had contracted with a local produce vendor and said, okay, we want a farmer's market. She said, absolutely, we'll throw a farmer's market, and they did it, I think, seasonally. I don't believe it was open during the summertime. I think it was just kind of snowbird season, winter. And the challenge was, once again, we didn't have control over the vendors. So when we said we wanted a farmer's market, she didn't want anybody else selling produce, so then it became a little flea market-esque, where people were selling earrings and stuff like that, and not actual, what do they say, farm-to-table type goods. I mean, I would even consider soaps, things like that, to be a little farmer's market-esque, but what she was blocking out anybody else that was serving produce. So that would be something that would be best served if it was controlled by us and where we had input on it, where we could directly profit from it, instead of saying, like that food truck situation where they got all the food trucks, they did all the legwork, and we got a small cut, but we had no say in who showed up or when they showed up when it came to that. So adding events does put more demand on staff, but none of it's impossible, and if we could come up with a way to effectively do it and have it benefit the community in the right way without impacting staff to the point where, because one of the things we kind of have an advantage on now is we have 2 facilities that actually have staff on Saturdays. We never had that. So that means, because most of our employees, with the exception of those that are in management positions, are hourly. So if they're hourly, we don't do overtime. And that means if you're here on a Saturday for an event all day, then I'm going to miss you on Monday, or I'm going to miss you on Tuesday, when we really need you to be here. So we're leaving ourselves short somewhere else. But we now have employees that are scheduled on Saturdays where we could accommodate something like that on a limited basis. I don't think we could accommodate it weekly, but a monthly, that could be doable.
To dovetail off of some of those comments, we discussed having a car show at Manatee Park, and I understand why we can't. However, after I left our meeting, it dawned on me, how come we can't have the car show where we have Friday Fest? I'm not saying monthly, I'm saying once a year.
That we could do. The unique thing about that particular space is it doesn't impact any residents. Well, I feel bad for the folks living at the corner of Taylor and Poinsettia, but so far they haven't complained about anything. But it's one of the few areas in the city, because we don't have a downtown. This is kind of our campus because we're now connected. That I know that the purchasing that property over there and the expenses of tearing down that building were not ideal and not accepted by all, but it does give us an area where we didn't have space before to generate a little bit of revenue with a food truck thing, or do a car show. And without impacting anybody not being able to get out of their driveway. Because that's the other thing, is you have residences everywhere. So
Okay. If you don't mind, I'll look into that.
I would welcome all the feedback.
I'll put it in a speaker call.
Yep. Yes, Kathy, we have someone that wishes to make a public comment.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry, didn't get it.
Well, I turned it in, so it's over.
Did she turn in a card? Yeah, that needs to go to the, yeah, that needs to go to the chair.
Okay.
I've enjoyed getting to hear you talk about the great ways that we can improve this city and the events and bring things in. And this is just something that I found that I thought you all might want to know, because the Space Coast Office of Tourism has a great website to market things about our area. And I was thinking, well, what a great way to get out that we have a pavilion out here to be rented. For example, with Manatee Park, there's usually not a lot of ways that you can find good ways to advertise, but this website is very well established. It's been around for years and years. So I went to the city of Cape Canaveral, and I pulled up, and it's visitspacecoast.com is the website. And I pulled up City of Cape Canaveral, and there's Jetty Park. Come experience Port Canaveral. Port parking space at Port Canaveral. The Cove at Port Canaveral. Checkmate Charters. Sweet Charters. Jetty Park at Port Canaveral. Wild Ocean. Falcon Charter Buses. Cocoa Beach Parasail, Fish Lips, Grills, Black Sheep Charters, Port Canaveral, 24 Hours, the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse, Play Linda Beach. There's not one thing in there for the city of Cape Canaveral.
Can I share some history on Visit Space Coast?
Yes, please.
So this is where, and this is an opportunity for not just our board, but also our city elected leadership to help staff with this. The most egregious example I can give is Visit Space Coast a couple years ago. They put together, and I attended the TDC meeting where they rolled this out and they did this big presentation. And the leadership at that time was City Manager Mr. Green, and he was assisted in a lot of the legwork running around by Mr. Josh Supernaut. And we were reviewing the most up-to-date publication that came out. They were very eager to share it with the city. And we saw they had taken footage of people walking on our boardwalk at Manatee Sanctuary Park and labeled it Port Canaveral. And then in another portion of their rollout of that campaign, they had that exact same footage of our boardwalk at Manatee Sanctuary Park and labeled it Cocoa Beach. And then when we looked at their cute little map that they drew, they didn't include the city of Cape Canaveral. They just said Cocoa Beach and Port. And when we brought it to their attention, they were like, well, okay, what do you want us to do? And the request was, can you put the city of somewhere in your materials? And they said that they would do that, and that's where it landed. So getting, because that's part of the county TDC. The county TDC pays for that.
Wow.
I think that it may be worth, because it just kind of, after the change in administration, COVID, and all of that other, I don't think that that was really still a consideration by staff, because we were so slighted the first time they did it. But they should be about due to be putting out another publication. And I think it could be time for us to advocate on that level with them to get more recognition for the things that our community does offer, not just the port.
Well, I was thinking of that website, just listening to the board's conversation and thinking, what a good way to market Manatee, the pavilion. Because I've had people get a hold of me, I deal with the tourists, that are bringing 15 of their family members, and they want a place where they can have their family reunion dinner that weekend. And most condo complexes don't want you to do that. With hotels, it's more expensive. You have to do event space. Most people want to be outside, especially those that are coming for family vacations and those kinds of things in the summer. They want to be outside. And so I thought that'd be a great place to market that. Then I went to it and I'm like, we don't exist. So
that's definitely a promotional opportunity that we can work with our elected officials and our board members in going to some of these TDC meetings and say, hey, remember us?
Well, and if you need me to assist with that in any way, you just let me know. I'll be happy to assist in whatever way. I just thought, what a great opportunity, because I actually had to clean up the property where we live that said we had closed. And basically, we haven't closed. So I had already had to deal with them on something else. So if there's anything I can help with, you can let me know.
Absolutely.
And I'll work through our interim city manager and with you. But I just thought I'd let you know, because I thought that'd be a good place to market, even like the kayak.
Because they don't charge for that. And what's interesting is when I attended that meeting for this big rollout, and I was kind of anticipating, oh well, we're finally not Cape Carnival or some of the worst terms that we've been called over the years, and we're making great strides. And at the time, the two buildings I think were either about to be under construction, but the deal, like, they were happening. I really thought that because there was so much representation on that board at that time for Cape Canaveral business owners, that they would look south instead of north. But I think Mr. Bogger has been involved in the TDC board in the past. I believe he was still there at the time. Mr. Hermanson was there at the time. And I don't remember, I believe our D2 commissioner sat, because the commissioners take turns when it comes to the TDC board, and I believe our D2 commissioner at the time, Mr. Lober, was on the board at that. But we still didn't get the true representation that I think we've certainly earned, at least in the last 5 to 10 years, of the changes and upgrades and the improvements and amenities that we've made. So that's a great opportunity.
I think it will help visitors to our area as well.
Yes.
Because the port has certainly changed a good deal since this was put out. And since it's so focused on the cruise industry, you really have to look at what other things are here. And I have people ask that a lot in my business. So they're looking for things outside of those boats.
Right.
And
not always Disney.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I see them walking through town, dragging suitcases, looking for anything to do. And as far as the hotels up on A1A, if someone is on a cruise and it's a family cruise, that pavilion's very close for them to be able to have a gathering and be able to rent. So, okay. Well, I'm glad you knew about that,
Yeah.
and I just thought I'd let you know what I found. I was like, we don't exist.
And I'll be in touch with, to strategize through the interim city manager to see how we can, because staff showed up last time. I think we need to bring in bigger guns.
Absolutely. Whatever we need to do to support you. Thank you for letting me address you all and for what you do.
Good idea.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jackson. That's a great idea. You know, too, I live, beachside, and I've seen a lot of beach weddings on Cape Canaveral. And I'm surrounded by 3 Airbnb, one's a duplex, the other one's a big single-family home. And then they go back to the home and have the reception, and the home is overcrowded and then they say, and then they park in our parking lot. We've had to have 12 to 16 cars towed because they're all drunken partying at one of the Airbnbs, and they're all parking in our condo complex because they don't know that there's these other places where they could have had the party, the reception, after they had a wedding on the beach. So, and they don't want to, like you said, they don't want to pay for a hotel. They want to have it outdoors, that type of thing. So, if we could get that out there, that would be outstanding.
Yeah, and there's another opportunity in that, and we're in the process of handing this over to the Community Development Department, but there's something called an outdoor event entertainment permit. We've had a real challenge trying to enforce that over the years. It doesn't bring in a lot of money because a lot of events are small, because the parking lots in these buildings are small. The parking lots, the VFW hosts a lot of outdoor events. They have to, the way the code reads is that if you're going to throw a party outside, whether it's a cul-de-sac neighborhood block party, or you want to, Ellie Mays, as an example, they just submitted an outdoor event entertainment permit because they're going to have a sizable gathering, or maybe already did, no, it's February, to celebrate their 5-year anniversary. So they had to fill out this form, and as I'm handing this process over, because it was one of those things where, yes, we are the department that has historically done the events for the city, but we're not the department that issues permits. We're not the department that goes, and if you're violating said outdoor event entertainment permit, I asked John, I've asked for a badge, I've asked for a little ticket book, and they're disinclined to provide that. They're like, just call code enforcement. And I said, well, why am I issuing a permit that I can't enforce? So in my conversations with Miss Brianna, the new Community and Economic Development Director, I asked her, I said, is a permit a permit a permit? And she said, oh, absolutely. And I said, if I issue a permit and these people are in violation, it's going to be your staff that has to go intervene, or BCSO, depending upon the level of the event. And as we were working through this, and this is something that her and I are going to work together on, because she needs to, get the history behind her so that she can make informed recommended changes for council to amend the code. But there's a fee if you're throwing one of these events. And one of the things that was discussed within, taking a hard look at this fee structure is, if you've ever paid for anything associated with a wedding, you could call it a picnic and pay one rate, and you say wedding, and the price goes up exponentially. So a lot of places, as soon as you tell the Radisson wedding, I'm sure they tack on some zeros. So that's another reason for these folks to just do the Airbnb and have a private, more intimate backyard barbecue as their reception. But we could not only benefit from them taking advantage of, say, Manatee or Banana River Park for their receptions, but also, and because we're handing this off to another department, because it makes more sense for them to issue the permit, enforce the permit, and take in the fees for it, it goes into the general fund, and creating a separate fee structure for beach weddings has been discussed. So, because that's, I mean, a wedding is a little bit more impactful sometimes. I'm still perplexed by the folks that want to get married on the beach because there's sand everywhere. But that's just my personal preference.
It's
I mean-
quite popular.
Yep, I would probably do that as a barefoot wedding, so that I'm not lugging around a bunch of sand in my heels. But that's something that just overall has been discussed with taking in a permit fee, the same as we do every other permit. That's not something that we had ever done in the past because it wasn't the permitting department running it. It was the Leisure Services Department or Parks and Recs later on. But we could tap into that wherein somebody gets this permit for this wedding because they have to have one. And then that gives us an opportunity to further promote, did you rent a 2-bedroom Airbnb with no parking? Here, you can take your guests over here instead and rent this place, and we're not going to charge you wedding rate. We have to charge you the same rate as we would anybody else renting it. But that would be an opportunity for more rentals as well. So it dovetails with, everything we do dovetails with some other department on some level. So that's an opportunity that I can discuss with her to add to her as she's taking on this new role.
So this would be something that would be monitored, like there would be people out there checking to see if there's a large gathering on the beach or a wedding that's taking place without a permit?
Well,
I'm just.
Yeah, code, that would fall under code enforcement. Yeah, code enforcement does have people, how many days a week?
6.
6 days a week. And then if there's other issues, like if all of a sudden there's 35 cars stacked at the end of Washington Avenue,
Yeah.
they get involved. So they get the next level of enforcement.
So one other thought that I had as you were talking about the car show here was an annual dog show. I don't know if that's even feasible, but
We've had doggy costume contests
But I
that
mean,
were very
you could
well
bring in some
received.
vendors for animals. I mean, like there's all kinds of stuff you could do with that facility right there. And because the dog park is in the spot where we could have a festival or something.
And we can use something like that to raise money to make upgrades to the dog park. And then I've also proposed the addition of a dog park in the CIP plan. It's been bumped out a few years to take advantage of some undeveloped space at Patriots Park so that we can have a rover space east and a rover space west so people aren't walking their animals across A1A. I don't personally like to walk across A1A, and I certainly wouldn't risk my animal's life in doing that. But that could be something that could help raise money for that project. It could help us raise money for the maintenance costs at the dog park. I don't know if you realize that those cute little fire hydrants that I love so much because it allows the dogs to cool off on a hot day, those are about $2,000. So
They're about to what?
$2,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Well,
27 for the big
The
one.
dog park is so
We had
popular.
largest
I'm
dog,
there almost daily, and
smallest dog,
you
dog
can
that
set your
looked like
clock
the
by when
person.
people get off of work, 4 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
that place is packed. And
That's a
you would
great
not believe the number of people that tell us, oh, we're from Cocoa Beach, but our dog park is so bad and muddy and nasty, we come here and
Yeah.
use Cape Canaveral's dog park because it's so nice.
Well, and you have the shade.
Right.
Because Cocoa Beach, I
Right.
mean, it's like a fenced-in area with
Yeah.
no shade.
And the AstroTurf is a huge
Like a
benefit.
fee opportunity to me.
That's a great
To
idea.
you-
Annual, John. I see annual.
A fee to use the dog park? We don't charge humans a fee to use the other parks. That would be my only concern on that.
If we're just throwing everything out.
Especially if they're coming from other jurisdictions.
They are
Something
in
to consider.
droves.
Is there anything else here? It's been an informative
I
meeting,
have,
but we
I
haven't
have a
gotten to
laundry
the
list.
staff reports.
Well, I think we've kind of covered most of the staff reports. We only have minimal updates on that one. But I think I almost have more here that I can turn around in a 2-month window, but I'll do my best in terms of research and in terms of different ideas to get into, stuff that I can approach council members and touch base with some of you that have indicated that you can assist in advocating or looking into just different research items. But I think we have a solid list of areas. And I'll run through them again to make sure that we're all on the same page. Area 1 is look at the contracts and look at revenue gaps. Number 2, increase engagement and awareness for our parks and facilities by posting our meetings and getting the input from the people that use it. Look at our facility rentals and promoting them, promoting our facilities in general, and tying into that if we need to be charging for facilities that we don't currently charge for. Number 4, vendor opportunities and performance-based franchises and contracts. So take a look at that. That we'll be definitely working with code on. Hosting events that raise web revenue and awareness in a smart way that doesn't necessarily impact staff, that doesn't conflict with other things happening in the community that we can still benefit from, that are still going to offer quality of life opportunities and revenue generating opportunities for the city. And then going back to the promotional things is getting Visit Space Coast and the TDC to recognize us as an actual entity that's separate from the port and not Cocoa Beach.
Good.
Whew.
Excellent.
I will be real busy the next 2 months.
Would it be possible to do something like this as a workshop?
Absolutely.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because I
Absolutely.
think that it is good, and I'm glad we did it this way this time. I'm thinking in the future, is it more possible to do it as a workshop rather than during our advisory
Regular?
board meeting?
Yes, and something was done last year, Ms. Jackson, do you remember when you did planning and zoning joint workshop?
Yes.
That would be what I recommended. They pioneered that for us, and that's basically because you guys and council aren't technically allowed to communicate on city business regarding because sunshine law, but getting a joint workshop where you guys can ask direct questions to council, they can ask direct questions to you in a public forum. We can take public comment. We get to have you come back. And also have staff present, because it would probably take place at a time that's not, 6 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, depending upon what we can coordinate. There was a lot of moving pieces to it, but, and Ms. Jackson can tell me yay or nay, was that a beneficial thing for planning and zoning for you?
I believe it was, and I think for this group specifically, it would be very advantageous.
All right. Yeah.
Because that way, as we move forward with budgeting and that kind of thing, that's why I'm starting to attend these, Molly, because I'm wanting to know what the board is working on, so that as we move forward through the CIP process and budgeting, I'm more educated.
Right.
So that's why I'm here. And I think it's a great idea.
All right, so I will work on the clerk's office, and we'll see if we can get that. I'll have to. Daniel would know. I'm trying to think of who's left that would know how they did that. Daniel would probably be able to provide me the logistical steps that I need to take to call, because it's essentially a special meeting for them, it's a special meeting for you, but a workshop actually falls under slightly different rules. Because there's not necessarily motions made, it's very much open discussion, but it's structured discussion, but it's still more open discussion instead of gavels. So, yeah.
I think the positive thing there too would be, now that we've had all of this great discussion tonight, we've got the wheels spinning here. That would give us even, time to go out into the community and hear more things, but also think about, we'll be able to generate even more thoughts.
Well, if you're anything like me, it'll come at about 1 a.m. So just leave the notebook by your bed and try to go back to sleep right after. Don't just keep
Well, that
going.
would be great. Appreciate that, thank you.
That's a good idea. John, did you have anything?
It went back off. There you go.
The Space Force unit was, had volunteered to come out and work on a project in the city. And we got together with Aaron, who was an employee here before, and came up with the splash pad needed some
Lots of
TLC on it. So they were going to paint the splash pad for us. The weather didn't cooperate. We rescheduled 3 times, and we're both baseball guys. 3 strikes, you're out in any man's league. So now they're going to work on the sea oats planting project, and staff began the painting this week. So we're approximately halfway through with getting everything down, the initial stuff down. And hopefully we'll be through by midweek next week if the weather holds. In an effort to always save money where we can, one of the worst places, and it's our citizens, and you no other way to say it, we have paper towel dispensers, and they just rip them out, flood the toilets with them over at the parks. So everywhere we've been able to, we've replaced the paper towel dispensers with hand dryers, and we are in the process right now of doing the downstairs at the C5. We've got one left to do in the ladies' handicap stall, and then that process will be finished with the exception of touching up the sheetrock where we had to do some stuff. But and then Molly and I were talking about budgeting next year because we've got 2 individual restrooms upstairs by the gymnasium, and that's not a big problem up there. It's mature, older people that are up there in the gym. But still, if we can cut out spending money on paper, that's a good thing.
Plumbing repairs.
Yeah, plumbing repairs. Pickleball and the tennis courts, you guys directed to repaint them. So that started. The back 3 courts have been, the repainting of the lines has been accomplished. The front 2, we still got those to finish. Yeah. So Marcy had a great idea because, as Kathy could tell you, pickleball and tennis, when it gets busy, especially this time of year, people they don't want to stand around and wait, and we do have large crowds out there. So Marcy said, since we've done the restriping on the courts, why don't we turn the back 3 into pickleball? So now you've got 6 courts back there that are going all the time, and the tennis folks are playing up in the front too. So far, everybody seems to be happy with it.
Well, and
What
for
about the-
tennis players, we don't use more than 2 courts
Right.
during except for our matches.
Right.
What about the north side of Court 5, where you have
It does-
holes, where you have...
Those holes are, yeah, they're outside of the actual playing area, referred to as the
Good,
kitchen.
okay.
So the players aren't really back in the area. So that kind of took care of itself when we did the new
Good.
lines back there.
And once those new lines were down, now tennis, not so much. Obviously, tennis plays like the whole space of the court. But as Marcy noticed, once they got those permanent lines down, the areas that the pickleball players are supposed to be playing in, as far as the main activity of the sport, they're not impacted by that dip beyond the fact that it holds water and they have to hit it with the dryer a couple more times. So
Good.
I'll take little blessings where we can. Marcy was able to get another company. We've just started flooding all of these companies to see how many people we can get out, how many professional opinions we can get, how many quotes we can get, so we could understand and allow you guys and council to have the full scope, because only certain companies are going to say all or nothing. Only certain companies are going to recommend, subpar things because they know you're going to call them back in 6 years to fix the same thing that they were paid to fix this time. So we're starting to get feedback from companies that never knew we existed, that are almost bending over backwards to provide us with the information that we need, knowing for a fact that we're going to either have to go out to bid or they're going to have an apples-to-apples contract with another agency that we piggyback off of. So, yeah, we received, obviously, it's just one more person giving us input, but we got a big old glimmer of hope out of that. So it might not be as invasive, it might not take as long as we were worried about. It just comes down to presenting all of the opportunities, considering, stormwater or anything additional that we would want to try to build into that site with the opportunity that we're given, because clearly something's going to have to come up. How much is depending upon how we want to approach the scope, or if they do want to incorporate other utility features, stormwater concerns into it. But yeah, we're in a good place.
Good.
And we're making progress. So, and so far, no one said these are unsafe and they need to be shut down. So,
And we're happy to have the number 1 and 2 courts, because they don't flood like the back ones do.
see, and you still got one that has the bushes on the side, so it's in the shade.
And that's good.
So when they're not playing tennis, then that means a total of 10 courts there?
Yes.
That's got to make them happy.
Oh yes, they're very happy.
Now they just need a little bit better weather.
Yeah. As far as my reports, I put everything that we do in the weekly update, so I'll just give you a real quick recap. We're getting really close to finishing the new website. We're allowing all of our department directors to review their sections to make sure, not just department directors, but admins, because the admins are the ones answering the phone calls and navigating people through these pages. So we should, hopefully, I told Amy that I wanted a new website for my birthday, so we're targeting the end of February. I figured that was a good milestone. I don't ask for much, just, new websites and stuff. So that's coming down the pike, and then I am beyond proud. I have not, because we've been so busy, because there's so much little things, budget stuff, day-to-day changes happening around the city that have required a little bit of cleanup, damage control, whatever you want to call it. I have not been able to be as hands-on as I would really prefer to be with the Cape Center, but between Amy Lee and our new part-time employee, Brandon, they put together an amazing exhibit called Cape to Cosmos that just opened the other day. And not only does it include art from our local people and taps into their imagination of space, but to complement that and to accentuate how we got from imagining landing on the moon to actually landing on the moon, we were able to get on loan a first edition copy of Jules Verne from Earth to the Moon, which I won't spoil it for you, but he's almost like Nostradamus level predictions as far as the Florida space industry. So
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was the basis of our boomer nuclear submarines. He was spot on in
he
science.
was next level. So we have a copy of that book. Obviously, you can't touch it because they were published in 1865, but it ties in nicely, and a lot of the quotes that he has from that book, I had a real hard time narrowing down which ones I wanted to use for the exhibit, because he covers everything from using your imagination to reach your dreams to things that begin as dreams turn into realities. Nothing becomes a reality until it's dreamed first. And then the last quote that I found, and I'm going to have to paraphrase, but it lends to, it's very important to put a little bit of art in everything you do. So in the words of the Big Lebowski, it really tied the room together. So, and it takes up almost half the building. So if you haven't seen it, please drop by. They put a lot of work into it. There's a lot of amazing artists, and the only thing that it cost us is the printing fees to make the placards and a little bit of refreshments for the artist reception, which was unfortunately scheduled for the other day when there was a much bigger meeting happening here. But they still had an attendance of almost 45 people, so.
Where was that advertised?
That is in the weekly update. We put out a press release for it. It's on the website, and the socials, and then she has created a little booklet and shares that with the Brevard Cultural Alliance. So
They put
and
it on
posters
the
at the
electric
facilities.
sign?
Yep, they're developing, the graphics needs for that sign are a little strange. And it involves some very detailed pixelated, Daniel does an amazing job, but we let him do it. But yeah, he's been given the information to put that out on the marquee.
And you guys should go to that talking word night once a month.
The poetry
I went
night.
there. It was really kind of cool.
Yeah, and that was put together by an art student that lives in the area. She is currently attending, similar to what I did, got my master's completely online, but she's a student at the University of Colorado and lives locally, and this was an internship opportunity. Her internship has come and gone, and she is still coming and running it and doing really well. So I'm like, oh, I thought she moved on, but nope, she loves it. She loves this community. She lives here, and she's done an amazing job with that, because that was definitely an arts, there's a lot of places you can go to see paintings. There's a lot of places you can go to see plays and performances and live music and stuff like that, but there's not a whole lot of places that you can do a spoken word or a poetry night besides, I don't know, the coffee shops of the 90s seem to be about gone, but there's that. But yeah, everything else will be in my weekly update, and I always have an open door policy if you have questions or are looking for something else to do or research for me.
All right, is there anything else, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
I would motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. Meeting is hereby adjourned.